6 out of 7.
Um, so I'm standing in for Councilman Ertel, Chairman Ertel today. He's traveling. He's joining us, but he asked me to chair our meetings today. It's quite an honor. Thank you, Chairman Ertel. Appreciate it. Um, so today we have a discussion with Dr. Miriam Rogers, the Superintendent of Baltimore County Schools. Dr. Rogers, thank you so much for joining us. I know that you have some, I'm assuming you have some remarks for us, and then I'm betting that my colleagues have some questions for you as we move forward throughout the afternoon. So thank you. I would prefer this to be in person. I don't like WebEx or whatever. But given the circumstances, thank you so much for taking the time and for joining us today. So with that, Dr. Rogers, would you like to go ahead with your remarks?
Yes, thank you very much, and agreed. Definitely, we're planning to be in person, but Mother Nature has different plans. So thank you for the opportunity to provide you with an update. And as you shared, after the slides, we'll open it up for questions and answers. Really appreciate this opportunity. Next slide, please, Brenda. Wanted to begin by sharing some information that you may or may not have heard. We're very excited to be partnering with CCBC for the first time in Baltimore County Public Schools for Direct Admit Partnership. This is a benefit to our senior students. It means all BCPS graduates are automatically going to be admitted to CCBC, but beyond the admission, staff at CCBC will be working directly with our students for financial aid, for college advising, and making sure that they are prepped for the next phase of their career. We are even more excited because CCBC has been most fortunate in providing the vast majority of their students with either reduced tuition or tuition-free admission to their courses. This means a lot for our working families, and there are partnerships that already exist between CCBC and several four-year institutions in the state of Maryland where students who complete their course of study in CCBC, they will be fully admitted in all of the credits in the four-year colleges. And so this is something that we think is of great value to our students. This happens in many other large school systems across the United States. And so we are excited, Dr. Curtinitis and I, to launch this for our students. And I think it's either this week or next week at the latest where our seniors, class of 2026, are going to receive their first joint message from CCBC and BCPS. And so wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that. Next slide, please. And then the next few slides really talk about the adopted budget, just some reminders and a challenge that we are facing that we wanted to make sure that we are sharing in with a variety of school system partners and advocates. Our students have changed over the last 5 years. When we look at our students, not only has enrollment decreased since post-COVID, economically disadvantaged, the percentage of those students has increased drastically, followed by multilingual learners. Our special education students, the percentage has remained relatively stable, but the cost associated with meeting the needs of students receiving special education services has increased drastically over the last 5 years. Our charge was simple 3 years ago, and we've been having this conversation for the last 3 years together. Our work was to come together to reverse the trajectory of academic decline, to make sure that we were focused and had priorities. And for the last 3 years, we have been working on the same 4 priorities because this work is not yet done. Elevating academic achievement for all of our students, creating an our building structures for our students, but also our processes and how we do our work, to make sure that we are as efficient and effective as possible, improving safety and climate for our students and staff, and investing in professional development to ensure that we have highly effective teachers, leaders, and staff. As a result of the work over the last 2 years, and some of this you're aware of, the state of Maryland and other outside entities provide regular updates about how all 24 school systems are doing this year. When the state of Maryland released information, they shared in BCPS, every student group across every single level improved in proficiency in both mathematics and language arts, school quality and student success improved for our elementary, middle, and high schools across Team BCPS. 82% of our schools over the last 2 years, significant improvement in higher rated schools, 4-star. We improved by 82%, 21% improvement in 5-star. 64 individual schools improved their rating. And as you know, for the second year in a row, we have the highest number of 5-star schools across the state of Maryland. The state of Maryland ranks all of the schools, elementary, middle, and high, across all 24 districts. And Baltimore County Public Schools has 9 out of the top 10 elementary schools. We have the number 1 and the number 4 high schools. When we talk about this data and being very proud, none of these schools are new to Baltimore County Public Schools. They have all been here, been in existence. It is the kind of work that the school leaders, along with the teachers and staff have been doing, that have moved them to the level to be top across the state of Maryland. We have made some major investments in Team BCPS, and most recently, when I was with the State Board of Education, they asked, why do I believe we are seeing some of the progress that we're seeing across the school system. Part of it has to do with these investments, and I do want to thank you again for the role that you played in supporting Team BCPS so that we could invest in early childhood, special education, a new curriculum, particularly in literacy and English language development, expanding our community schools, recruitment, retention, safety, and infrastructure in Team BCPS, along with professional development. All of those investments have made a difference in terms of outcomes for our students. During this budget season, we worked really hard to make sure that we could answer questions plainly for our community, making sure that everyone was very clear on the sources of school system revenue, making sure that everyone understands that BCPS is not revenue generating. And while we receive a large school system budget, that is the law, and it is based on the size of our school system. Most recently, someone shared with me that we are larger than more than 99.8% of school systems across the United States of America. And because everything is based on enrollment, our funding is based on the enrollment of students. We are grateful to have county government that continues to support us above maintenance of effort, but really trying to make sure that our community was clear on the majority of the funding that we received, that the majority of that is required by law. You have seen this graphic before that we've shared this school year or this budget season with all members of our community when they ask the question, how is that BCPS funding spent? And to answer the question plainly, 82 cents of every dollar is spent on people. The darker parts of the dollar that are shaded show how they are disaggregated by union groups and the non-union members, which is the 1 penny. And then the other 18 cents is what it costs to operate the school system, and that is further subdivided for all members of our community. We have been sharing this since October and has received a lot of positive feedback from community members in terms of their understanding of what's a sizable budget, but what does it look like when you are looking at every single dollar. This slide we've shared throughout the budget season, helping everyone to know and understand that BCPS is indeed receiving additional revenue for the FY27 budget season, both state and anticipated local. That is not the issue. The concern is with declining enrollment in all of the funding formulas are based on the number of students that are in school and increased cost of compensation, the gap that is created between revenue and enrollment, which we're using these funds to address compensation. This does not include any additional costs that the school system has to pay for utilities, services, and et cetera. You have seen this. After the county executives, the budget will come forward to you, the adopted budget from the Board of Education Board of Education proposed budget that went to the county executive includes full compensation costs the second half of year 2 and the full year 3 for all members of Team BCPS. New spending was kept to a minimum, a 73.6% reduction. Only the absolutely required items were included, a little more than $5 million in academic achievement. A portion of that, the greatest portion of that, is charter schools, what our requirements are in the state of Maryland. And special education, both speech language pathologists, as well as meeting the needs of our existing special education programs for SCLS, CLS, and continuum of services. The other area was in infrastructure. A portion of that, the majority of that $1.1 million was for 12 additional positions for new construction projects with new square footage that is coming online in the fall, and $110,000 for contractual employees to process all of the transcripts across the school system and data analytics. The board adopted, prioritized the year 2 and year 3 of the compensation package as I shared, but it also ensures that BCPS, with the exception of $3.6 million, adheres to the initial target that was provided by our county executive of 2% increase over last year. Over the last few months and including last week and this week, I have spent time advocating for Team BCPS, continue to meet closely with our county executive, who has made it clear her desire to do more. At this time, based on the timing of the budget process, we don't know how much more yet. But I am appreciative, given some of the changes that have come forward in the governor's proposed budget at the state level. I have advocated and testified in front of the Ways and Means and Appropriation Committee, doing a briefing for the blueprint. And we had sent a letter to the governor regarding compensatory education. BCPS had stood to lose a little more than $15 million. Had they reverted back to ways of calculating poverty for students based on our advocacy across the state, along with the other school systems, our number is down to $3.5 million as the gap in the state. And so I'm going to continue to advocate on behalf of Team BCPS and hope we can address that by the end of this legislative session. You also see that we advocated at the state level on behalf of the special education funding crisis that I have shared with you before. Across the state, we spend more than $1 billion that is unfunded to meet our statutory requirements to meet the needs of students receiving special education services. Currently, the state is going through a study, and we are hopeful that a differentiated formula will come forward that provides improved funding to school systems to meet the needs of students. I've shared at the state level, and you likely have seen this communication as we shared some of our information from most recent press conference, a concerning trend that we have seen in BCPS, where we are looking for additional support is for our multilingual learners. For the last 10 years, our multilingual learners were our fastest growing population in Team BCPS. No matter what happened, even post-COVID, we grew by 1,000 students per year. Last year, we had a decline. You'll note it was about 100 students decline from the year before. So while 100 doesn't look like that much, that large of a number, when you look at the fact that we have typically grown by 1,000 or more, it's a pretty significant decline in enrollment. We also saw a commensurate higher dropout rate, specifically for multilingual learners and Hispanic Latino students. I, along with our executive directors, principals, PPWs, had an opportunity to speak directly to students to ask them what was happening and why they were choosing not to come back to school. They spoke to us directly about the fear. And what students also shared is their immigration status can be fully U.S. citizens, but if they live in a mixed status family, particularly the older students, the ones in high school, many times responsibilities for younger siblings and responsibilities in the household fall on their shoulder. And so I do know our Board of Education is moving forward with examining policy for protection for our multilingual learners. Last year, there was affirmation through a resolution. All of our staff has direct information from the state of Maryland regarding what processes to follow. But I wanted to make sure that I brought it to your awareness that this is a concern that we are seeing play out in our schools and Baltimore County Public Schools. And just because it is always helpful to draw your attention to information that is publicly available, all of our information regarding staffing, what formulas we use, enrollment, projected enrollment by school, both of those things can be found in our posted budget book. Every single school has a school profile online that shows the exact staffing that was provided to them. That is available for the public to see should they have any questions about their particular neighborhood schools. And the next slide just goes on to what's on our webpage. And these are the resources right on the front of the webpage at the top as well as at the bottom. And we have Budget 101 that not only has fiscal year 2027 information, but also has information going back, I believe, to either maybe fiscal year 18 for any and all people who are interested in Baltimore County Public Schools. And with that, those are some of the slides that I wanted to share with you, information that I wanted to make sure was available. And I will turn it back over to you and open it up for questions that you might have.
Dr. Rogers, thank you so much for that and all the information. And let me be the first of the members to thank you for your service to Baltimore County and Baltimore County Public Schools. You are retiring, moving on to, I don't know what, bigger and better things, who knows? But thank you for your service. I'll open it up to my colleagues. Is there Anyone has a
Thank you.
question for Dr. Rogers or? I saw Councilman Patoka, you popped up first.
Here we go.
And I think Councilman Young is next.
Councilman Crandall, let me just say you're doing a great job as chair this afternoon.
Yeah, I know. I know this already. Thank you.
And Dr. Rogers, I too want to thank you for your service. You have been a real leader for our school system over the years that you've held the helm, and even prior to that, when you were not the superintendent, but certainly you were an influencer in the direction of how we educate our children here in Baltimore County. Just a question about the presentation. I don't remember over past years seeing it presented by union affiliation. And did I just miss it, or is that something we do every year, or is that new this year?
The compensation costs?
Yeah, where it was organized, whether it was ESP or TABCO or CASE or ASME. I don't remember seeing it categorized in those categories, I guess.
So we
that sounds
always have
redundant.
that information. Most recently, I want to say last year, if you go on Budget 101 for last year and the budget questions, we presented it in table form because it was a question that as I was going out to the community conversations and because it was a large increase for compensation, that was a question that the community had. We didn't want there to be any misinformation because some of the information that was out there was that the majority of the increase was to non-represented staff or central office staff. And so one of our responsibilities is to make sure everyone has accurate information. And so that was the reason that in addition to the table, we also presented it as a pie graph just to make sure that there was clarity.
I see. And then during different presentations, I've seen the number of 500 and then 597, between 594, 597 positions that were cut this year. Out of that, how many are vacant? Do we know what the vacancy number is for those 597?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but I will share with you that BCPS on the whole, we don't have a lot of like just vacant open positions. The first year when I did the FY25 budget and we had a pretty significant reduction in FTEs, part of what we did was eliminate those traditional vacant positions that we kept on the books.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Rogers, and good luck to you in your future. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for your partnership.
Thank you, Councilman Patoka. I think Councilman Young, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Dr. Rogers, for your partnership throughout the years. I wanted to, I know we've had conversations related to the budget before SAC was meeting and making its decisions. And in the beginning, we were talking about compensatory education funding, and you brought that up in your presentation. You also mentioned about advocating for special ed funds. I was wondering if, since you were down in Annapolis, and I know at the beginning of the budget process and the legislative session, there's angst from your side and from our side about what the legislature is going to do. Is there anything else related to some flexibility that's been that we found, or things that are coming through that we'll expect from the budget that's produced from the state legislature that's provided us flexibility as a county, but also for you as a school system?
My fingers are crossed. I am hopeful that the reduction that we saw from the 15.5 to $3.5 million, that at least we stay there, or it improves by the end. So far, so good. But you know, we still have a ways to go, and so I will be back in Annapolis tomorrow.
Right. Well, thanks for your continued advocacy on that. I appreciate you bringing up the numbers of our multilingual learners throughout the system. And also wanted to thank you for also sharing their concerns and some of the information that you found, just talking to them about what their what leads to some of the de-enrollment and also from folks that are just not re-enrolling in the system. On a lighthearted note, I did want to bring up or ask, and you don't have to answer now, we can talk offline about it. The Baltimore County does offer seals of biliteracy. And I know that we've highlighted that in past years because our numbers have been so high. This also sort of indicates why so much we can offer these certifications leading into their next level of education. So be interested in talking with your staff about that and how we're doing this year, and kind of from a county level or just a council level. If there's anything we do for communities that are concentrated in our particular districts, I'm sure my colleagues would be also interested in reaching out and providing support where necessary. If there's feelings of fear within their community, and also just trying to make sure that BCPS is a safe place for folks to go to school.
I definitely appreciate that. Seals of biliteracy, that's still one of the indicators, that we are monitoring for our students. We have a pretty good idea of how the students are doing for the senior class now that we moved into the spring. I will take a look. I think the students are still trending in a positive direction with that, but I'll look and see if any of this enrollment impact that we've seen, if it has an impact on what we're expecting for the seals of biliteracy for the end of the year for students who are speaking more than one language. So thank you for that.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Young. I believe Councilman Jones, I think that you were next in the queue to be followed by Councilman Ertel. Julian?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Number one, thank you for the presentation. And thank you so much for your service to Baltimore County Public Schools and all the students, teachers, and support staff that are there. I think you leave on an extreme high note with all indicators appear to be going up, with the exception of truancy coming down, with the exception of some of the things you just mentioned here today. I guess as we are moving forward, it's always been, sort of rough whenever you go from one leader to another with a large jurisdiction such as ours or any organization. Sometimes it takes a while for, folks to sort of get their sea legs. But clearly, I think we're heading in a very good direction, and we're going to certainly miss you, and sorry to see you go. But moving forward, what are some of the things that you could, if you don't mind, giving us some forecast, what are some of the things we should be some of the things we should continue to do that we can pass on to the next leader that takes over the helm, and some of the things that we should look out for as a county in terms of pitfalls or traps or things that you can see in the horizon? Some of the things we should do and some of the things we should be worried about.
So thank you for that question, and thank you for your kind comments. I think one thing that we should do is make sure that there is still that continued collaboration, open communication, so that there is that partnership throughout the year. I have found that that has made a significant difference in how we are able to lead the school system and work with families and community members who have needs. I also think the focus on academics has to stay front and center no matter what happens. This year, we're really trying to work in partnership with the State Department of Education around mathematics. There's an overhaul there with the state standards. And the performance in mathematics across the state, including Baltimore County, is not what it should be. And so that needs to be a laser-like area of focus moving forward. Mathematics for our students, to making sure that our students are demonstrating great proficiency in this area. One thing that I would say, particularly from the vantage point of where you sit as lawmakers for Baltimore County government, that will be important to watch on the horizon. And we have been talking about this at the state level, is around blueprint, but specifically minimum school funding. The guidelines in that area around 75% that should follow the student in the school. We have been elevating. I serve as president-elect for the State Superintendent Association. We have been elevating to the state Department of Education, as well as to the governor and to AIB, concerns that school systems have about unintended consequences, that a lot of time and energy is spent in accounting, taking away the focus on students and instruction, and some of the way that this is set up with the number of 75%, what that does to other school systems. So as you know, the blueprint has a flat rate for every single student based on enrollment, and then there are multipliers by service group. So service group meaning children living in poverty, multilingual learners, children receiving special education services. If you have a school that has been doing well for a long period of time and does not have high percentages of students living in poverty, receiving special education services, or multilingual learners, that means that there is less money flowing based on this formula to the school. At a certain point, there are going to be some tough decisions that have to be made across the state, and inadvertently, challenges community by community that we don't want to ever pit communities against each other. And so that is an area where we are lending our voices and trying to advocate in advance of when this becomes a requirement for all school systems, because we can see what some of the negative impacts might be to school communities.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers, for that insight. And as the temporary chair or whatever I am today, I'm trying not to interject, but it just seems like every 10 years or so, lawmakers, especially General Assembly, feels like they have to make a mark when things really aren't all that difficult to figure out if you just talk to the people that are in the classrooms. So I'll leave it. Sometimes politicians need to step out and let the experts do what they do. Anyway, Councilman Ertel, you're up.
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Rogers, I know it's been said, I think we've all appreciated how collaborative you've been since you took over with the council, and we're definitely going to miss you, and sad to see you go. And I know everybody said their little piece, but I wanted to say that as well. As far as the declining enrollment, this is the second year that we've seen that. Is that correct? Or we did?
This has been since post-COVID.
Okay, so have we been actively losing students every year, or was there a hit and then it built back up and we're still down? Or can you just explain?
So the hit was COVID. That was
Okay.
the year of the hit, and then we've never come back up to pre-COVID numbers. What was different this year is we saw some, some movement in some areas. What was different this year is the multilingual learners piece. So even though we were losing students, our multilingual learners population continued to grow by 1,000 until this past year. When we dug into the numbers, and many of these numbers and reports came from Baltimore County government, we learned that there are about 30,000 fewer school-age children now than 10 years ago in Baltimore County. There's out-migration out of the county, out of the state. The birth rates have gone down, and you have the multilingual learner situation. Homeschooling became more popular during COVID. We still have some families who are availing themselves of homeschooling or our online learning programs. But last year we had a concerted push around that and brought, I think it was about 60 families back to the school system. We don't seem to be losing them, students, largely to private schools. It's more those other areas, that the team has found.
Okay, great. One other question. So it looked like our disadvantaged, economically disadvantaged students have grown. Do you feel like at the the legislative level in Annapolis, are there formulas that help us that we're not taking advantage of as our disadvantaged students grow? Because one of my things that I've always talked about is I feel like we've absorbed some of the poverty that was in other areas. Some of it may have come from the city, it could have come from other counties, it could have come from other regions. But Baltimore County, as we are absorbing more of that, it doesn't feel like and again, I'm not disparaging or accusing anyone, but should we be looking to ask for more help with that as that population grows, I guess?
I mean, I think, no, thank you for the question. I think that's what we're doing. We're advocating for hold harmless formulas, for formulas that look at enrollment over 3 years. That's what's helpful. The potential risk this year was going to be going back to calculation of poverty through students turning in forms, which we know historically, even pre-COVID, that wasn't really an accurate way to gauge poverty. And the number of families where one or more person has lost their position, I think has only made the situation a little more dire. So anything you can do to continue to advocate along side us around holding harmless formulas and rolling enrollment to give to give school systems a better idea of the numbers of students, and not and using ways to calculate poverty that are likely to capture as accurate record as possible. I think that's what's ultimately going to be most helpful to us, because that formula is what the state will use to provide funding to the school system.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Dr. Rogers.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, is it okay if I go forward?
If you must.
Okay. Dr. Rogers, I want to thank you for your last 3 years of service to Baltimore County, and I wish you all the best in the future. I hope you have an enjoyable retirement, assuming you're retiring.
I am.
You are. Okay. I have been very interested in academic improvement, and one of the charts that we saw earlier in your presentation referred to schools that have made significant improvements in academic performance.
Yes.
And when looking at those schools that have been very successful, has the school system determined if there's any one or two resources, or 3 resources that have been particularly helpful in increasing our academic performance?
Thank you for that question, and thank you for your kind comments. And I think we have. First, I think everyone would say our change in literacy curriculum, having a curriculum that now is aligned to state standards, that teaches the science of reading, and we're ensuring that we're implementing with fidelity, has made a significant difference for our students. And we also, for the last 2 years, have been deep in the work of Research for Better Teaching, the Skillful Teacher. That's the work by John Saphir. And that is specifically how to teach. What are those strategies that should be present in every single classroom? No longer making the assumption that everyone knows the best strategies and everyone knows how to teach. And when we talk about high expectations, that everyone knows what that means and what it looks like. Being explicit in our expectations, providing that training for leaders, for teacher leaders, as well as throughout the year, providing it for teachers and paraprofessionals in the classroom. I think the work that we've done around curriculum, as well as the work around instruction and ensuring that we have been out inside of the school buildings, inside of classrooms, monitoring, providing feedback, has made a difference in terms of the outcomes for our students. I mean, and there are plenty of other things that have been done, but specifically around academics, I think those two things, having high quality materials, as well as being clear on what high quality first instruction looks like, which is tier 1, what all the students receive before you move into different levels of instruction, has made a significant difference in Baltimore County Public Schools.
I, since I'm a retired math teacher, I would be interested in seeing what you're talking about in the subject of math. Because, you know, Baltimore County has always been, when it comes to math, has always been strong. And I know they're not as strong. We're not as strong as we used to be, but I'm glad that we're making progress. And I'm just very curious as to what is being done that's different. Um, Baltimore County does not write its own curriculum any longer, do we?
No, and no one does. The state of Maryland has HQIM, high quality instructional materials, where they go through some very extensive processes to vet curriculum that are aligned with the state standards. New state standards for math are coming out. New state standards for literacy recently came out. And the expectation is for every area, they provide the list of approved vendors to the school system, and they also provide a timeline in terms of if you have to make a switch, like in literacy. There's an expectation for universal screeners where we're looking across all ages of how students are doing with reading. The state has identified the products that are approved for this purpose, and then they will work with school systems for a timeline to transition to that. The good news is Renaissance Star is on that list. Baltimore County Public Schools, we started using that this year, so there is no transition for us and our students. We also have great data on the growth of our students already this year, which we will be sharing soon with members of our community. But the curricula, there have been changes to expectations for all 24 school systems at the state level.
During the summers, 20 years ago, they used to have workshops where they developed curriculum. Do we have teachers in workshops evaluating curriculum that we've purchased?
So we have a few things going on. The biggest thing that we have happening now that didn't happen until 2 years ago, didn't happen for more than 10 years, is we actually have teachers in professional development over the summer. They attend professional development both on their content area as well as instruction, pedagogy. The curricular offices do have funding that they use either for our experts that are within their offices or teachers, many times department chairs that they will bring in, whether it is supplementary materials that they are writing supplementary materials, or as we've worked to make sure that we've had central assessments that are aligned to the standards, we bring in teachers for that work over the summer.
The companies that produce the curriculum, are they open to suggestions, to comments from the school systems that use their service?
They are. They absolutely are, and we have worked very closely with them. They have come out for our elementary schools, all 110. They have come and done visits at every single school twice a year, and when they receive the feedback, they don't receive feedback from central office solely. They receive from teachers, practitioners in the classroom, providing feedback about what's working and what's not working directly to them.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilman Cash. Dr. Rogers, I think we had budgeted an hour, so we have a few minutes left. So if none of my colleagues have an additional question, I want to give you the opportunity to talk about the capital program facilities. Selfishly, high school, middle school, high school is obviously part of my grand plan moving forward, and I know that there are other projects that are either ongoing or that the system is about to undertake. So I thought I'd give you the opportunity to expound on the capital program, if you would. And then I see that Councilman Marks has joined us. He may have a question for you before we wrap up.
Yes, thank you. Our capital projects, we most recently in January moved forward a recommendation. So we're waiting to see, what happens throughout that process. The state has provided revised guidance for all school systems in terms of the priority areas need to remain the same at all levels, both what we recommend to the state as well as what we recommend locally. We do know that over the last few years, costs have increased, not only cost of goods and materials, but also costs of services. We're excited that right now we have 3 high school projects happening simultaneously. As you know, Lansdowne High School, Delaney, and Towson. We also have 2 elementary school projects. The first, Zero, Deer Park Elementary, we have Scotts Branch Elementary, all moving forward as expected, and we are hopeful that our request will be approved with the I think the full knowledge that as costs continue to go up, and we do know so far we have not heard of any additional capital funds like a Built to Learn Act 2 from session or anything like that, that might slow down some of the other projects that are on the list in terms of the timeline, but no change has been made in terms of the priority order. Everything is still in the same priority order, and that information is available on board docs. Happy to have Ms. Stifler forward it over to the council after this call, so you have the most updated list and what we submitted in January to the state.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. I appreciate that. Councilman Marks, you joined us. Do you have any, before we wrap up, do you have any questions or comments for Dr. Rogers?
Thank you very much. And I'm sorry, I'm just joining you. I was in my other teaching position. Dr. Rogers, I want to thank you for your help with school overcrowding in the Northeast. I think we have made some real progress in the Northeast. The numbers are all really going in the right direction. In Nottingham Middle, the 2 new elementary schools have been key to that. I guess that begs the question, and I know Councilman Ertel really cares about this as well, Overley High School and where you see us going in the Northeast to addressing those issues.
So I believe Overley is on the list. It is in the priority list, and I'm going off of memory, but I believe there is an addition that is planned. And so that's what I was speaking of in terms of the priority order has not changed. But we do know that due to the rising costs and not yet seeing any additional funding coming in at the state level, that might slow things down. But there has been no change as of the last time we talked about capital projects, which was just in January, and what was submitted. So, we can forward the priority list to the entire council, but we anticipate that the capital project that is planned, will still be on the list as, once the funds come in for the school system.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. And
You're
I
welcome.
know those high schools are important, and I advocated for particularly Towson when I represented Towson, but I'm hoping that once we get through those, we can start moving on, and also Perry Hall and Loch Raven as well, which are very older schools. I just have two other questions. Perry Hall, I know you know about what happened on Friday. This was off campus. It was not on the high school grounds, but parents are continue to be concerned about overall discipline. Any thoughts on that? Any thoughts on what we could do better?
So I can take a look, but I think we have, provided some additional supports at Perry Hall High School. I think something that's extremely important, as you mentioned, this was a community incident. It is very important that we stay in close contact with our partners. Baltimore County Police, who have been excellent partners with us, providing support, that when there are concerns that they are reported immediately so that they can provide that support. That will be incredibly important. We can take a look, but I believe that Perry Hall does have additional supports inside. And so the concern as this one that you shared happening in the neighboring community. And so I think working together with Chief McCullough, that will be helpful to make sure that they have all of the information in a timely fashion so that they can deploy resources in the community to keep all of our students safe.
Thank you, and hopefully those individuals are charged appropriately and prosecuted appropriately. My final question, and I apologize if this has been asked. I know that there's an orientation for new teachers, and one of the people in my district sent me this email. It says that we're hiring between 500 and 600 teachers. Is that a typo, or we definitely hiring 500, 600 teachers?
So I think that might have, whoever sent you that email might be speaking to what we have hired over the last few years, how many numbers we have hired over the last few years. We have not shared any number that we're hiring for fiscal year 27 at this point. So last year and the year before, that's about how many teachers we've had in the new educator orientation.
Okay. And we're still looking at moving the special education over to Maryland Online, right? Remember, we had that discussion about the special education database moving to Maryland Online.
So that is a conversation that the team has had internally. We are one of maybe 5 school systems that are using another system. I think I might have shared with you, there are some concerns about capabilities that the system has to provide services that Maryland Online doesn't have. We understand that it presents, a hardship when a student moves in from another Maryland jurisdiction, but the team is weighing the pros and cons. We had talked about a transition to Maryland Online, but they continue to remain in conversations about what's in the best interest of students and trying to hear what is coming forward in terms of changes around special education and what they should do, moving forward to make sure that whatever change they make, that it's going to have a long-term positive impact.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we're at about time. Does anyone have any further questions or anything? I don't see any hands raised. Dr. Rogers, if you have any closing remarks, I don't know if you want to close us out. I will say that, and I think I said this to you privately, that you took on a very, very difficult job at a time when our school system was facing criticism, was on the heels of a ransomware attack, on the heels of COVID, and you took the job on, 3 years ago, and you've handled it with grace and poise and professionalism. And I think that I can speak for all of my colleagues that we just appreciated how open and available you were to us with questions and information. And I do feel that the system losing you, I think, is losing a major asset. And I think that my colleagues would probably agree with me on that. We may not have agreed on every single thing, but it's a tough job, huge budget, large population, diverse population, and you've handled it just expertly. So we appreciate your service to not just the past 3 years, but your dedication to young people in Baltimore County for many, many years. So with that, I'm going to leave you to take us out.
Thank you. I am most grateful for your comments. I am grateful for the partnership throughout the years. I'm going to be here for a few more months, and so I look forward to making sure you have all the information that you need. And I am hopeful that we will have a positive outcome on the final FY27 budget to take care of all of the hardworking individuals in Team BCPS. So thank you for all of your comments and all of your continued partnership. I appreciate all of you.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. I think that's going to close us out. I'll see everybody we'll see everybody at 6.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So long. Be well, everyone.